Good evening. Okay. Audible, right? Good evening. Hello. Yeah. Sound എന്തെങ്കിലും പ്രശ്നമുണ്ടോ? So that break ആകുന്നില്ല ഇങ്ങോട്ട് പറയുന്നു.
ഇല്ല സാർ, കുഴപ്പമൊന്നുമില്ല.
ഇല്ല അല്ലേ? Okay, that's good. We have been dealing with land. Okay. മെസ്സേജ് ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ എൻ്റെ ഈ വീഡിയോ ഉള്ളതിലേക്ക് മെസ്സേജ് ചെയ്യണം. ഞാൻ എൻ്റെ ചാറ്റ് ബോക്സും വീഡിയോയും ഇതിൻ്റെ അകത്താണ് കാണുന്നത്. നമുക്ക് എഴുതുമ്പോൾ അതിൻ്റെ അകത്ത് മെസ്സേജ് വരത്തില്ല. മെസ്സേജ് കണ്ടേ പോർഷനിൽ അയച്ചാൽ നമുക്കത് എടുക്കാം. ആ ടോപ്പിക്ക് എൻവയോൺമെന്റൽ ജോഗ്രഫി വരുന്ന ഒരു കാര്യമാണ്. We are going to study environmental geography. We'll come across it again. So at that point, we'll write a few things about it. Ethnocentric and technocentric. And I haven't revised that for a while. Okay, so all right, so we'll start. So last day we were talking about land as a resource. Now equally important resource is land, then comes water. And water is very important. So we'll be today seeing the significance of and the not just significant water as a resource, how it is present in India, how much endowment we have, how we are utilizing it, the issues. So how much will be, how much can be seen in the form of surface water and groundwater. There are two types of water resources, basically these two. How much, how we utilize, that needs to be seen. Issues in the utilization of water. Then I think we have to look at some of the solutions. Screen sharing work. Yeah. Solutions to water crisis. And one of the most most famously put, often discussed solution is the proposal of river interlinking. So that also needs to be looked at. So these much are the topics that we are going to cover in a broad sense, and we'll be looking over it or like 1.5 hour period. Okay, so and probably we'll get into the biogeography part where we have to see the topics related to biogeography. Then we have environmental geography in a bit, and in between we'll also cover some of the topics which we have still remaining. That's stamps classification of Indian climate. We'll see that a few more in the resource part. So that's how we are going to go from here. Okay, so water resources. Water is a very critical resource. We know that. I mean, there's no need for explanation of how critical water is. Now, if you look at India's case, India has again about 4% of global freshwater resource, but it caters to about 17% of global resource. So there's a clear mismatch with respect to how much water we are provided with, and how much of water we are, how much of the population that we have. and how we are using that. So the main issue, some of the issues that comes up is like how we are using this water which we have uh, in our hand. Like the water which is available is often, if you are, it's a factual topic, and so just getting into an overview initially. If you look at India's water resources, mainly we have two source of water resources, that is the groundwater and the surface water. Now the groundwater comprises of the water that has percolated after rain from runoff from rivers. So the water that is found inside here. So this constitutes one of the most important source of water. So if you consider wells, tube wells, springs, all these are how groundwater is extracted. Now groundwater extraction is one of the most important factor as far as distribution of water in India is concerned. For agriculture purpose, for domestic uses, for industrial uses, groundwater has been used uh, in a significant manner. Almost it's our like 50 percentage of utilization. Now surface water India is endowed with several rivers, like Ganga is there. Maybe you can broadly say the Himalayan rivers and the peninsular rivers. Both have its own nature, where Himalayan has more toward the water supply. Together, it comes up to around 1,100 BCM utilizable water we have in a year. Billion cubic meters of water is available for India to to utilize. Now, the issue that's a static part. Now, what's available, how much of water is available will depend upon several factors. I say this is the potential we have, or the water that is available for us to utilize. Now, this will depend upon several reasons. One, the availability of water, surely how much water is available. That will be dependent upon various geomorphological and vegetational factors like that. Now, another factor is that climatological factors. Now, the next factor would be how much potential developed. Okay, so how much of water can be harnessed by us? So sometimes the water that is available in some remote area may not be accessible. So we need some kind of mechanisms, like maybe canals will be there, would be needed. Maybe tap connections would be required. Maybe so different type of mechanisms for potential. So potential of water that is developed. Maybe the river having 100 units of availability of water, but maybe we'll be able to use 50 percentage of it, maybe 80 percentage of it. So that is a potential develop, the potential of water that can be utilized. Now the rate of extraction is also there. How much of the potential created, how much of water is being extracted. So the basically the water utilization would depend upon these factors. So extraction would be the number up to which extraction or extraction would be there. So you can say then finally we will see the rate of depletion of water. Like maybe if you look at groundwater resources in India, about in some of the regions, like maybe the green revolution areas, the peninsular areas, what groundwater is depletion of groundwater is very high. So extraction of groundwater comes to around 125 percentage. That is, every year water is recharged. So 125 percentage means what, say 100 units is recharged every year. We are consuming 125 uh, units. That means what, the extraction is higher than the level of water that is being replenished. So in the sense that we are exhausting our resources, and this will run out like for 100 യൂണിറ്റ്സ് യൂസ് ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ എല്ലാ വർഷവും 100 യൂണിറ്റ്സ് വാട്ടർ അവൈലബിൾ ആണ്, replenished out. So there won't be an issue of extraction or depletion. Now, since we are using more than that is getting replenished every year, we are exhausting our resources. So this issue can be seen in the case of like areas like Bangalore. You see this issue uh, in uh, in the northwestern India, in the agricultural lands. You see this issue. So here all like the Niti Aayog's composite water management index was there. So the index has identified the crisis areas and said like by within a couple of years, some of the cities would run out of water if recharging measures are not taken. So there is an exhaustion of water. Now there are several reasons for it. We'll look into that, but broadly speaking, agriculture is one of the main culprit here. Agriculture accounts for about 77, or rather, we can say 80% of water use in India. 80% of water is used by agriculture, and then by the rest of the community. So agriculture is highly water intensive, mostly in most regions, water intensive and poor efficiency, poor optimality of water use. That's one major reason. Similarly, there are other reasons. High demand for water, very high demand for water. Pollution of water bodies is another issue. Okay, so now there are several issues such that, like that, what you call us. Then there is another issue of basin disparity. Some basins would be rich in water. This goes for groundwater, and this goes for surface water. Some basins are very rich in water. For example, generally, if you consider the peninsular rivers, they are deficient in water availability, and the Himalayan rivers, which are very rich in water availability. Now, when you take these measures, like you are mostly saying an average for India, like India have this much 1,100 million cubic meter of water per year, which is a good number. But the issue arises when you look at the regional disparity. If you look at the Brahmaputra basin, you have enough water. Generally speaking, the Ganga basin is having good amount of water resources. But if you look at some areas like Kaveri, what is the dispute? The Kaveri dispute is about what water division between states. Now, water division between TN and Karnataka is becoming an issue because the deficit nature of the basin. Suppose the basin has enough water to cater to the demands of both the state, there wouldn't be a chance for, there would not arise the chance for a conflict, which is a bloody conflict in the case of these two states. But when the water resource is very scarce, for example, Kaveri is a deficit basin in the sense that it does not have enough water to flow. Almost 100% of the water is potential has been developed and extracted. Okay, in rivers like Brahmaputra, the potential has not been harnessed. Water is not required in that much amount, so water development of the potential is very limited. Even in our case, in the west flowing rivers of Kerala and all, the potential harness is limited. But in a river like Kaveri, the potential is seriously harnessed, but still that harnessed water is extracted in sufficient in an equal manner, leading to deficit nature of these rivers. So other rivers like even the rivers like Krishna, the rivers like Godavari, all are in a sense utilized to its maximum possible, maximum possible extent. So that creates the issue of deficit basis. Now this is an issue. In fact, when we look at the basins of India, you largely see some of the basins are like would be like say like surplus basin, mostly surplus or marginally surplus, and you see the rivers of the peninsula which are deficit rich. Now this raised a proposal of national water grid, or what we call as the river interlink project. River interlinking project. In that, you will be trying. There are different components. The peninsular component is there. The Himalayan component is there. Himalayan component within Himalayan rivers. Peninsular component within peninsular rivers, and also an interlink between peninsular and Himalayan rivers have been proposed. So this would be like to put, bring the water of Brahmaputra into the Ganga part, maybe the water from Ganga into the southern part. This has been the proposal, but there are several practical difficulties included. Okay, there are several practical difficulties included. For example, if you look at some of the things include, there will be high environmental impact. We have this Panna reserve. The Ken Betua project is there. Na? So Ken Betua project is there, that is endangering the Panna reserve. Similarly, environmental impact of other type like what we call as forest destruction is one, hydrological cycle being disrupted, right? Similarly, the nature of the basin itself is an issue, surplus or deficit. Some of the basins are very marginally surplus, some are facing the threat of climate change, right? Similarly, high cost. These are issues which are, limiting where or are that are raised as a criticism or counters against the idea of interlinking. Interlinking has its own advantages. You will see maximum utilization, best utilization of water, more next zone area, more economic development. These things can be seen. So that's the idea of interlinking. We'll see that again. So this much a proposal. Now, in an alternative to this, what do you call us centralized top-down approach of development, which is not much like these days. There is other alternatives too, which is the watershed development project, watershed development idea. Now, watershed is in any region where there is uniformity of drainage. Meaning what? Watershed refers to a part of a river. So this river is here. There are water flowing into this river from all these parts. Now this will constitute the watershed of the, I think you have studied in regional development. This constitutes the watershed of this river. Okay, or rather we can maybe say this river, this particular area would mostly have a similar agroclimatic conditions because of the obvious reasons that there would be rain would be the same more or less. The vegetation would be same more or less. So watershed development is a proposed idea to counter. Like this would mean what? Decentralized what? Development of water resources. Now this would include what? Extraction obviously, but on the more than that, use of traditional what you call as traditional water recharge mechanism for what you call as sustainable extraction of water. So that is a watershed approach, and it will also include much more things: land management, water management. Similarly, if you look at it, water management plus biomass management. So these things like that. So the entire ecology, the entire agroeconomic region is being targeted to ensure there is a balanced use of water resources. So on the first hand, you have an approach which focuses on developing, extracting more creating more utilization for what is available. Now, the second one, the watershed approach would focus upon developing the resource assets. Resource base needs to be developed. We need to open the amount of water that is available, not just think about how to extract this water, but to think about how this water which is already there can be enriched and can be used in a sustainable manner. Now that is what the watershed approach is trying to do. Now India's policies are caught between these two regions, these two approaches, where you focus on extracting more and more and more. Sometimes you focus on enriching the source. So both are there in India's water policy, right? So this would be the overview of the water situation that is existing in the country. Now we'll write along and then explain the different issues in it. Okay. So we'll start. If you look at the available water resources, the utilizable amount of water that is available will come to 1,100 BCM per year. We discussed that. Now, out of this, the groundwater accounts for about 700. This is approximate figures. I'm not giving you the exact figures. The 10th place and the 1st places are not being discussed because it is okay for us to go with an approximate number. Now groundwater resources account for about 700 BCM, not kilometers, so BCM per year, and the surface water accounts for about 430 BCM per year. So this is how the uh, the potential of India's water resources are located at or available at. So that's the provision we have. And obviously, you see the groundwater potential is higher. For example, even in Kerala, like we see mostly groundwater. Especially when it comes to village areas where uh, pipelines are not there or government supply of water is not there. You depend upon the wells, then tube wells. So this is the same condition even in other parts of the country. Mostly wells are used, and this is the primary method of irrigation and other water availability. Now, for that very reason, we first look for groundwater as the main source of water for uh, main source of water in India. Now, if you look at groundwater, first of all, we look at groundwater is extracted from what? From land. Then there is a water table. Water table is the level up to which water is found in the under the surface of the under the surface. Now, this has been seen like we have land here. So this would be the groundwater table. This would be the land. So we have seen all this, right? So the water table that is in discussion. So this is a level of saturation. So there will be changes in the water level depending upon season and extraction that will be there. Anyhow, this is basically the groundwater table and we'll be digging wells into the bottom, into the water level table. There's a permanent water table and temporary one. So you would be building this to collect water. Now, how would you say like what is the water table like? What determines where the water table is located at? Okay, so we have to basically there are two factors. One, there is a natural factor, and then there is a human factor. Now, natural factors is obviously the reasons which are there. Human factors would lead to what the natural resources that is there, how it is utilized. So that would be explained by human factors. So we'll first see the natural factors which are there. Now, the natural factors would necessarily mean what? Obviously, first one would be the precipitation. In a dry region, it's very difficult to see more and more water. Precipitation would be one factor. For precipitation is what leads to percolation of water. Now, the next one would be the structure of the rocks. Or rocks of the region. Rocks of the region could be porous and non-porous. Right. So porous water would be having permeability, and water will go into the water table inside the land. But if you are in a non-porous water in rocky areas of non-porous rock, which would prevent the water from percolating, and there will be lesser and lesser percolation of water. So it is basically these two factors. Beyond that, we have vegetation as another factor. Vegetation will allow more water to be percolated. So we'll see just these two factors and how it is how the India's groundwater zones can be classified. Okay, so let's write a few things. Natural factors affecting availability of groundwater. First one is precipitation. With precipitation is the relationship is simple with respect to groundwater. When precipitation is high, the groundwater table will also be high. Higher precipitation leads to better percolation of water and better groundwater table. So that is very easy. Okay. Now the second factor is the structure of the rocks. Structure of the rocks in other rocks in lithology and rocks in arrangement. So first of all, we see the lithology. Lithology of the rock. It regulates lithology of the rock, determines the rate of infiltration of water, or it regulates the infiltration of water into the land. So that's the role of structure of the rocks. Okay. Porous formation. Structure of the rock can be classified into porous formation and non-porous formations. There is primary permeability and secondary permeability for what? A particular rocky region. So primary permeability means what? The water percolates easily. Secondary permeability may be introduced by the introduction of fissures, cracks in the rocks. So porous formations are those with sedimentary formations. Sedimentary formations like alluvial sediments of river basin. Alluvial sediments of river basin, coastal areas, deltaic areas will be having primary permeability, which leads to high infiltration of water. On the other hand, semi-consolidated formations, like which have secondary permeability. Secondary permeability due to presence of cracks, fissures, faults, rift valleys, etc. Crack, fissures, faults, rift valleys, etc. will have relatively high permeability and infiltration and allow infiltration of water. Now the second one is non-porous formations. Non-porous formations consist of shield areas, volcanic rocks, like basaltic plateau of Deccan, would not allow much percolation of water, much infiltration of water, thereby leading to development of poor groundwater reservoirs. See, let's look in the case of a shield, Dharwad shield, Singhbum shield. Okay, in these shields regions, these rocks are crystalline rocks, which does not have normal porosity. Sedimentary rocks coal, for example, even coal is sedimentary rock. So if you pour water into that, the water will infiltrate into that. But now, if you took it just flows over it. Now, this happens in the shield regions, Karnataka, all those Telangana, these regions. The water's capacity to percolate into it would be less. And whenever there you have some fissures, it will again percolate a bit, a little more. But generally, it is absent. So the type of the rocks is a major function that determines the way water infiltration is happening. Now, third one is the slope or arrangement of the rocks. Now, if you look at mountainous or hilly slopes, runoff, they would have steep slope and thus runoff would be very high. So these would be again zones where you have very groundwater table low. Low groundwater table would be available. So now just see how the groundwater table is distributed across India. So this is the RL Singh's classification. RL Singh's classification of RL Singh's classification of groundwater provinces. Now there is a complex one where each groundwater province in India is demarcated. But I'll just explain what the simplified version. This would be like the simplified versions would mostly consist of these regions. Okay. The regions with what good groundwater potential, and the rest of them are regions where low groundwater potential is available. Now, if you have to just look at the different, these are in a way you can say this is unconsolidated and porous groundwater province. You look at sedimentary rocks of the region. This is sedimentary rock region. You have enough water that is percolating. Black soil region, again, you will be having fair bit of secondary percolation. And on the other hand, if you look at the shield area, where you will get very low percolation into very low percolation into what you call as groundwater table. So here in the peninsular part, mostly you will get very low percolation. Now I'll make this map available, the complex one. Maybe you can study that. Once there was a question about writing about the groundwater provinces of India, but I'll just give you the details of groundwater provinces. That's more important. Map, so I'll put into in the PPT that I'll be, or in the files that I'll be giving. Okay, so now just write about. We'll just familiarize ourselves with the different groundwater provinces of India, since it has been asked. There are 8 provinces, which is basically depending upon how these areas are formed. So if you are remembering the genesis of the peninsular plateau, we had discussed about shield area forming, then consolidated area forming, these basins formed by deposition of sedimentary basins. So these regions would be having this. So these what do you call as the crystalline regions or the shield regions would be having very poor groundwater potential. So we'll start with by writing one of them. Zone 1, you can write. I'll try to, while you are writing that, I'll try to complete the picture map. Okay, so zone 1, Precambrian crystalline province. I hope you would be familiar with the name when I say Precambrian crystalline. Okay, Precambrian crystalline province. These are the regions which are mostly composed of the shield region, and you can say the Rajasthan platform. Okay, so please write the Aravalli and Rajasthan platform. The Aravalli and Rajasthan platform, Bundelkhand, Chota Nagpur provinces. Chota Nagpur provinces. Okay. and Orissa Plateau and Dharwad Shield. Okay, the Aravalli. So just look at the nature of it. Aravalli, obviously the shield region. Rajasthan, underneath the Rajasthan, you have the Deccan Plateau, although it's quite sandy. Rajasthan platform. Bundelkhand, obviously a crystalline region. Bundelkhand have been formed during the genesis of the peninsula. Chota Nagpur, again, similar thing. Dharwad Shield, we have seen this is a Dharwad Shield region. So one. Okay, so that's mainly where you will find these what do you call as Precambrian crystalline province where permeability is very low. Water percolation would be very low. Now, it represents a consolidated province and has deficiency in groundwater availability. Please, right? It represents a consolidated province and has deficiency in groundwater availability. Now, the second one is Precambrian sedimentary provinces. Okay, Precambrian sedimentary provinces of Katappa and Vindhya Basin. Katappa and Vindhya Basin. It is again a deficient, it is a what sedimentary basin, but it's a consolidated sedimentary basin, and that's how consolidated sedimentary provinces. It is a consolidated sedimentary province, and thus have deficient groundwater table. So these are the better ones. So these are the deficient ones. Because of the nature of the rock, we'll have very low water permeability. Now zone 3. Zone 3 is the Gondwana sedimentary province. Zone 3 is the Gondwana sedimentary province of areas like Damodar, Godavari. They are semi-consolidated basins. They are regions of semi-consolidated rock containing good aquifers of groundwater. They are regions of good groundwater potential. Now the next one is zone 4, the Deccan Trap region. Now Deccan Trap is composed of impermeable basaltic rocks which are volcanic in origin. Which are less porous. However, the presence of secondary porosity is introduced through the presence of fractures and fissures. The presence of fractures and fissures make the Deccan Trap basin a good reservoir of groundwater. Now the fifth one, Cenozoic sedimentary provinces. Cenozoic sedimentary provinces are found along the coastal areas of Gujarat, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh. In fact, you can say the eastern and western coastlines, which are good aquifers, and have good groundwater potential. Again, coastal areas are sedimentary based. Sedimentary based ആയതുകൊണ്ട് water easy to percolate. Now, zone 6 is the Cenozoic fault basins of the Narmada and Tabi region. They allow the permeability of water. They have good porosity and allow the percolation of water in the groundwater provinces. And thus are good aquifers containing large quantity of groundwater. Now there is zone 7, which is basically the Indo-Gangetic alluvial provinces. The Gangetic alluvial provinces, which are made up of unconsolidated sedimentary rocks and which are sloping very gently. Thus making it a good aquifer of groundwater. Everything is positive here in the Indo-Gangetic Valley. Now, Himalayan provinces, the last one is Himalayan provinces, the 8th one, Himalayan and the mountain provinces. Deficient groundwater provinces due to presence of igneous and metamorphic rocks or non-porous igneous and metamorphic rocks. As well as the steep slope, which leads to higher runoff, reducing the porosity, as well as a steep slope which reduces percolation due to fast runoff. Okay. Now we have to just see the levels of groundwater development across the country. So these are the provinces. Now, based on the provinces, the nature of the provinces is not alone as to determine how much potential is that being utilized. For example, even in the regions of Karnataka, interior Karnataka, where the groundwater table is minimum or found to be low, high levels of groundwater extraction is happening because we have the technology, and based on technology, you can pump out water as much as required. So groundwater development, is not what you call as a direct function of the provinces. In some provinces, for example, even if you look at the province of Indo-Gangetic Valley, groundwater provinces are not that developed and that much extracted because you have what you call as surface water is amply available in plenty in the Indo-Gangetic plain. So the dependence on groundwater is relatively less, whereas in dry regions, high dependency is there. Okay, so groundwater development is a function of groundwater development is equal to annual groundwater extraction by net groundwater availability. So these concepts can be asked. So sometimes the UPSC can ask elaborate on the pattern of groundwater development in India. Or sometimes maybe you can UPSC has asked, indeed they have asked these questions like asking ഇന്ത്യയിലെ ഗ്രൗണ്ട് വാട്ടർ പ്രൊവിൻസസിനെ കുറിച്ച് എഴുതുക. അപ്പൊ നമ്മൾ ആദ്യം പഠിച്ച കാര്യം. അതേസമയം ഇഫ് ദി UPSC is asking about ഗ്രൗണ്ട് വാട്ടർ ഡെവലപ്മെന്റ്, then നമ്മൾ പ്രൊവിഷനെ കുറിച്ചല്ല എഴുതേണ്ടത്, എക്സ്ട്രാക്ഷന്റെ പാറ്റേണിനെ കുറിച്ചാണ് എഴുതുന്നത്. സോ ഗ്രൗണ്ട് വാട്ടർ ഡെവലപ്മെന്റ് is equal to annual groundwater extraction by net groundwater availability. So this basically shows groundwater available for consumption for different uses of by the humans. So that's the basic thing. Now we can look at the various categories of groundwater development. Okay, so if you see the levels of groundwater extraction in India, these are usually found to be the highest in the Green Revolution belt and its surrounding region. Also, the urban areas of the peninsular India. Right. So here you can say what overexploited, that is greater than 100% use. Then you have in the surrounding regions other areas like where it is critically exploited. So the surrounding regions of it would be critically exploited. Right. So these would be the pattern. These are the two main regions. Similarly, some of the Maharashtra regions also have high water exploitation. So some of the Madhya Pradesh region where you have high water exploitation. So that would be the pattern. Now, this is basically the pattern where the rest of them, the blank spaces are basically safe zone as far as groundwater extraction is concerned. Now we'll just write about it through in a logical number. Okay, so various categories of groundwater development. The first one is safe regions. Where you have 70 to 8 up to 70% of potential for various about 70% of the water is extracted. So just okay. These are safe zones where up to 70% of water is only extracted. Then you have the semi-critical zone where you have about up to 70 to 90% are exploited. Critical zones where 90 to 100% of the areas are exploited, and overexploited. Overexploited means more than that is replenished would be used. That is greater than 100% of areas are used. So we have drawn the picture actually, the regions which are under this. So we'll give the overexploited regions and find the reasons for that. Okay. Now, various categories of safe region. We'll first look into safe region. About 70% of India is under this category. Large areas, mostly India are under the safe category. You can write that mostly into the safe category. That's not our major concern, but I discussed earlier, the disparity in these usages are found in different locations. Now the semi-critical areas, about 10% of the districts of India falls under this category of semi-critical areas. Parts of Western UP, parts of West Punjab, parts of Bundelkhand, so Bundelkhand, the northeastern Karnataka, are regions where you find semi-critical exploitation of water resources. Now, the reasons include change in cropping towards changing cropping pattern towards crops like wheat in wheat and malva in Bundelkhand, cotton in Karnataka, and sugarcane in Maharashtra. These are crops which are water guzzling. In fact, wheats are grown up to in regions where about 90% of more than 90% of the region is irrigated. Similar is the case for sugarcane and cotton. More than 90% of the cultivated area is irrigated. Ideally speaking, these regions would have cultivated oil seeds, pulses, millets, but instead of through groundwater extraction, these kind of crops are grown. So you see that the reasons for that. Now the critical regions up to 90% what is exploited. The critical regions would be those again surrounding these belt. They good parts of Kutch, Western Rajasthan, parts of Kutch Peninsula, this region is access to here. Western Rajasthan, Bundelkhand, and parts of Karnataka. Now also look into the overexploited regions. Some of the overexploited regions include almost all of the Green Revolution belt of Punjab, Haryana, Western UP, Eastern Rajasthan. Okay. Right. So just the area, we are not spending too much time on this. Reason being the altered land use policy, altered cropping pattern which are unsuited to the agroecological conditions of the region. Agroecologically unsuited. Agroecologically unsuited cropping pattern dominated by water intensive crops like wheat, rice, sugarcane, and this is also this situation has worsened due to intense cropping where up to 3 crops are grown in a year. Where up to 3 crops are grown in a year. So gross sown area would be up to 3 times of the NSA because not just one crop, up to 3 crops are grown. So take the case of classical example of Punjab, Haryana, these regions, Western UP. They have canal network, fair enough. Canals are there, but more than the canals, they are highly dependent upon the groundwater resources. So they are pumping out the groundwater into the surface so that to irrigate crops like paddy, rice, which requires a lot of water. So that's the issue here. Okay. Now let's see some of the issues why groundwater depletion is such high in India. So this could also be used as reason for generally for water scarcity. But we'll first see the impact of how groundwater resources are declining. Okay. So what could be the reason?
Well extraction വരത്തില്ലേ?
Yeah, I mean let me know. What could be the reasons? Yeah.
iPad-ന്റെ ഇത് പോയിട്ടോ കാണത്തില്ല.
Battery issue. Okay, fair enough. Now tell me,
ട്യൂബ് വെല്ല് വരും, ട്യൂബ് വെല്ല്.
tubewell irrigation could be one. Anything more?
ഓവർ യൂസേജ് മീൻസ് ഇലക്ട്രിസിറ്റി സബ്സിഡി കൊടുക്കുമ്പോൾ ഓവർ യൂസ് ചെയ്യുന്നു.
Electricity subsidy is a very critical point in this one. Fair enough. So this can be seen from two sides. That's from the demand side and the supply side. Demand side issues are there. Supply side issues are there. Demand side issues obviously with the one where the more demand and the issues that are the problems that are proliferating the demand, and also the supply side. Okay, so we'll write a couple of points. Groundwater is one of the most important water source in India. It accounts for about 60% of irrigation and about 80% of domestic water use in India. And Niti Aayog has highlighted. Niti Aayog has highlighted in the Composite Water Management Index the groundwater crisis that India is facing. Some of the important reasons for the fast depletion of groundwater resources are high population leading to high water demand, 130 crore plus population and subsequent high water demand. Growing food consumption and efforts to increase. Second word. Growing food consumption and efforts to increase agricultural trade has led to more intensive groundwater extraction to support the crops. Third one, green revolution. Green revolution based on water intensive HYV seeds. Water intensive HYV seeds grown in drought-prone and semi-arid regions. Drought-prone and semi-arid regions has led to high rates of groundwater extraction. Subsequent policies like subsidies on electricity, where vast majority of groundwater pumps are unmetered. Vast majority of groundwater pumps are unmetered or subsidized at or are highly subsidized tariff or are operating at highly subsidized tariff, leading to excessive and wasteful withdrawal of groundwater. So if you have to pay no price for either the water or the electricity bill, you will just switch on the motor and let it pump out the water, and then maybe in the morning will switch it off. So there is no cause for wastage of water. So that's an again issue. You have to bring in a wastage. Okay, I mean the cost of weightage. You have to penalize it, right? Then we can also talk about the limited storage facilities of the limited storage facilities of the groundwater provinces. Groundwater provinces, owing to hard rock terrain, limited capacity of the the groundwater provinces owing to hard rock terrain, along with added disadvantage of low rainfall, especially in the semi-arid regions of the country. Flawed groundwater policy. Flawed groundwater policy, which considers groundwater as a private resource. Flawed groundwater policy, which considers groundwater as a private resource, which encourages exhaustion of groundwater. Encourages exhaustion of groundwater without any fear of penalty. Now, other points can be obviously mentioned: deforestation and unscientific agricultural methods, wetland destruction, concretization of land, deforestation and unscientific agricultural practices, wetland destruction, concretization of land, which is a function of urbanization and industrialization. Okay, these are some of the points which you can see with respect to groundwater depletion as to why that is happening. Now, the next point is so that's about the groundwater provinces. Like basically, you have to see now. You have to see again the promises under Atal Bhujal Yojana. Bhujal Yojana is one of the steps taken by Government of India to augment groundwater resources and groundwater recharge through promotion of traditional methodologies, traditional water harvesting mechanisms, reducing water demand. So all this comes under the Atal Bhujal Yojana. Okay. Bhujal Yojana. Now, the second one is surface water, how surface water is used. Now, some of the questions UPSC have asked is with respect to surface water is the the development, right? The status of development of a particular river basin. Such a question was asked. But in general, you can see surface water. It just would be even if a question is there, it would be a combined question with respect to the different types of water availability, that is groundwater and surface water. Those would be the most probable questions. Now, if you look at the status of surface water development in India, some of the most important rivers, maybe Brahmaputra. If you look at Brahmaputra, it has about 600 kilometer cube per year availability of water, but it is utilizable only after 24 kilometer cube per year. So very limited utilizable, high potential but limited utility. Similarly, if you look at Ganga, just about 500 kilometer cube of water available per year, but about only 250, half of it is utilizable. Okay. Now, if you look at other rivers, maybe something like Krishna, for that matter of fact, Krishna has about 70 kilometer cube per year, but out of that, about 60 kilometer cube is per year is utilized. So high level of water utilization. Okay, so this would reflect the fact that some of the Himalayan rivers are suboptimally utilized, which because of the climatic and water availability situation there, water is sufficiently available. But some of the other rivers of the what or the peninsular region are highly utilized. So the almost about 100% of the water resources have been developed. It has been developed so that it can be used. Now, in all of these, you will also see the different type of what status of land use, rate of irrigated land out of the total agriculture land, NSA and GSA can be seen. So these kind of things can be picked up with pretty factual information which you can collect on your own. Now I'll dictate a couple of things, but again we'll see the way where the water resources are utilized in India. Okay, so again we'll write about the groundwater extraction rate of India. In fact, the numbers are just indicative. We'll go with maps. Maps would be very important here because that's what we can do. We'll not be able to study everything properly, but rather we'll see how this groundwater is exploited. Okay, through maps. Just let me charge that. If you look at the nature of surface water basin and their nature, mostly you would see, first of all, let's draw them. If you look at the map, we can divide it into the rate at which it is the water is utilized. So if you look at the Himalayan first, on the other hand, you have the peninsula, what you call as the western, very low. Only 85% about surplus water is found here. Very low utilization of water resources that is available. Now, then, if you look at the other regions, sometimes like the northeast, the Brahmaputra plain also, you see very low utilization, 85% surplus base. Now, then you have other regions which have varying kind of surplus water are available. Look at the case of Barak Valley, about 10% marginal surplus, marginally surplus, not pretty much surplus. Then if you go into the Indo-Gangetic Valley, these are the regions which are primarily where Godavari basin is also having deficit, marginal deficit. Then large area of India would be suffering from what high deficit regions. Obviously, the desert part would be suffering from so this is the pattern in which water deficit, according to CWC, Central Water Commission's classification, you will see the basins being classified into this one. So there are some surplus basins. If you look at these west flowing rivers of India, which are basically a surplus region. Some of the rivers in the eastern part are also can be considered to be surplus region. Okay, surplus rivers because there are Subarnarekha, Baitarani kind of small rivers which are in surplus. But mostly, if you look at the rivers in India, Brahmaputra is obviously a very surplus river because most of the water could be transferred to, and very little extraction is there because the agricultural activities are limited. Only the Assam plains have significant agricultural activity. Baki regions will be predominantly less irrigated and water extraction is limited. But all the other regions, if you look at the peninsula, the rain shadow belt of peninsula, some of the coastal belts will also be having what marginal deficit only. But other regions, the interior peninsula, again interior peninsula, the desert region, all these regions are deficit basins where water is not available sufficiently. Okay. Excuse me, Daddy. Yeah, all right. So these are the regions where water is not
Sir,
sufficiently available. Yeah,
ആ ഗാൻജറ്റിക് പ്ലെയിൻ അല്ലേ അത് ഡെഫിസിറ്റ് ആയതിന്റെ കാരണം എന്താ? എന്റെ നെറ്റ് പോയിരുന്നു കേട്ടില്ല.
എന്തോ deficit
അത്
ആണുള്ള കാരണം.
ആ ഗാൻജറ്റിക് പ്ലെയിൻ.
Gangetic plains are basically waters in a developed water, whatever that see this is deficit is based upon development, how much of water is developed. So the water developed is mostly utilized. There is more potential to be utilized, but it is marginally developed deficit because the water that is developed, the potential that is developed is used for agricultural and other activities. There is no surplus water, and that's why you see the rivers are highly polluted because the there is not enough water for to basically maintain the environmental flow. Okay, so high agricultural intensity is one reason, and industrial presence. These are the reasons why it is marginally deficit despite having a good amount of water availability.
ഓക്കെ സാർ.
Okay, yeah. So it depends. It's not just a function of how much water is available, but equally, it depends upon the amount of water that is developed and the water that is utilized. Now, if you look at the case of Brahmaputra, it is a surplus region because most of the water is not developed there. There is not much of canal network, but in the Gangetic Plain, you have enough and more canal network. So what is well utilized? Say a river like Satluj or Yamuna, which is water is mostly utilized. Like in the case of Satluj Yamuna link canal between Punjab and Haryana, Punjab is not allowing Haryana to build or it's not giving the enough water, the fair share of water to Haryana, which was allocated to them. That's the Punjab Haryana Yamuna Satluj link canal issue. That's a river water dispute because the water is fully utilized. I mean, there is not much of water left, even when it is a Gangetic Valley perennial river. Okay, so that is something we can understand about the pattern of water use in India. Okay, this would be enough. Like we don't have to go into too much factual information into that. We'll see like how the water use levels are there in India. Conceptually, development in the carrying develop the surface water development, how much of what dams are built, multiple river valley projects, all these used to be taught, like used to be studied in the earlier days. But it occurs to me like these kind of questions are not asked. This factual expectation is very less these days. So it will be very difficult even for you to mug up all these things. And I think that is not necessarily that important. We have to just see the trends of what is happening in different basins, and then we can talk about the other dimensions, like how water is utilized, how how we can find solutions to this. That would be more important. So we'll stick to that a particular theme. So let's write a few things about the water requirements in India. And one thing more I will mention about the balance between groundwater and surface water is that earlier the surface water used to be the most important. The proportion of surface water, if you look at roughly speaking, with time, share in water use has declined. Earlier, surface water was irrigation. Irrigation. In the case of irrigation, the earlier surface water irrigation through canals was a major source of irrigation. But with the onset of electric pumps now, surface water develop. If you have studied agriculture, you would have studied irrigation in agriculture. So surface water potential has not developed very much after the independence or the initial years of the independence. Then it was the groundwater and tubewell irrigation that has substituted the significance of surface water irrigation or the canals, for that matter of fact, as the most important source of irrigation. So that's why we see high groundwater extraction. See how high groundwater extraction is a major, more serious issue than surface water, because surface water can be replenished with rivers. But if you exhaust groundwater, it will be very difficult to replenish that. So that's kept in mind. Water requirement of India. I will have to write a few more points only. We'll finish this quickly. Water requirement in India. So per capita water availability is a measure that is used to measure. I mean, it's a tool that is used to measure water stress. Per capita water availability in 1951, 1950s used to be about 5,400 meter cube per person per year. Okay, now that has come down to such a low levels where now you have about 1,530 meter cube per year, and that's expected to go even to 1,250 by 2050. Okay, so this is something known as, now this is water stress. Now water crisis would be when you reach to this level. So there is a steep decline. Two reasons are there. One, water resources are not increasing like that. At the same time, the population is exploding. And on the other hand, you are not going for efficient use of water. So that is something that can be seen. The total water availability has come down drastically. Okay, India is becoming a water scarce country. These numbers, these figures you can find in Meteor's again composite water management index. So refer to that for more details. Now, next one is sector-wise data water utilization in India. Sector-wise, about 78% of water use is by irrigation for agricultural purposes. About 6% is for domestic purposes. About 5% for industrial purposes, and the rest, like maybe 1% for environmental ecology, 1% for navigation, evaporation loss, like in the book. So it's mostly, one thing you have to remember is that it's mostly the agricultural sector that is the major consumption of water. Okay, water is mainly consumed by the agriculture sector. So whenever there is if you are trying to do something about it, you have to basically fix your agriculture sector. Then only you can fix the water crisis in India. Now, if you go into the major problems, some of the problems that we face in the case of water availability. So please write a few points. The first one is water stress. Water stress is when the water available per capita is less than 1,700 meter cube. And water scarcity is when it falls below 1,000 meter cube per capita. Another issue is the availability of safe drinking water, potable drinking water. So availability of safe drinking water is low across the cities in India. Chennai, Mumbai, Delhi, all these regions, about 50% of the water is potable, that is drinkable, safe water. The other water that is available is basically contaminated, unsafe for consumption of human consumption. So That is to be kept in mind. So very low availability of safe drinking water. Another important issue is the water pollution. Water pollution, where about industry, which accounts for 5% of water use, is contributing to about 40% of water pollution. So that is another major issue that needs to be controlled. Again, disproportionate influence of industry. Agriculture is there. Again, agriculture will contribute to the waste of pesticides, fertilizer, eutrophication, all these issues there. And then there is institutional challenges. So even when you are mentioning about pollution, you can draw a map and identify the major sources of major type of water pollution. So if you can look into it, you can see fluoride pollution in the arid regions of the country. You can see arsenic pollution. Pollution in the eastern part of India, especially the Bihar, the humid areas of Bihar, West Bengal, those regions, you will see high arsenic content in the water. So some regions you will say uranium content, maybe in the mining belt area, you will see the uranium content slightly in the water. So all these are pollution issues that water is facing in India. Now another issue is institutional issue should be mentioned. There is no measure like we are unable to maintain existing infrastructure of water resources, right? So there is not much of what you call as, if you look at the Karnataka Kaveri issue, Karnataka Tamil Nadu issue, there is no mechanism for proper measurement of water, proper distribution of water. Institutional mechanism will figure the water disputes between states. So all these things will be falling under the water institutional measures. So similarly, pollution control mechanisms are a complete failure. You can look into the Namami Gange project, poor success ratio, poor success with respect to Namami Gange. You can look into the Belandur Lake incident. Maybe if when you are looking for case studies, you can look into the Belandur case of lake in Bangalore, which is forming, which is catching fire. Right. So similarly, another issue is the salinity. Salinity of groundwater provinces. If you are looking beyond the surface water, especially in the coastal areas, in the Gujarat basin, especially in the Andhra basin, you will see salinity of groundwater is increasing because of intrusion of saline ocean water, and that is happening because of decline in groundwater table. Decline in groundwater table will lead to what? Water from the sea entering into the groundwater. That is again an issue. Now there is also issues of the basin or regional disparities. So each basin is not equally rich in water resources. Some are deficit, some are highly deficit, and that regional variation is again a problem. Okay. Now, couple of solutions can be written. Management of water resources. There is something to be written. So I think you have taken the valid points which I was mentioning. So I would give you a couple of suggestions as to how to take care of. We are only giving you I'm only giving them overview of the picture. The best solution to this to get a couple of points is that you can refer to Vision. So all these content are available in Vision. There is no distinction between the GS content and the optional content. Wherever there is distinction, I'm taking it in detail. For example, the groundwater provinces, which was not there in GS, we have taken that in detail. ബാക്കി ഇതെല്ലാം GS available ആയിട്ടുള്ള കണ്ടന്റ് തന്നെയാണ്. നമുക്ക് വേറെ ഇതൊന്നും ചെയ്യാനില്ല because whatever available in GS is whatever available for options only, because water crisis നമുക്ക് പ്രത്യേകിച്ച് പുതിയ ഒരു ഡേറ്റ കൊണ്ടുവരാനില്ല. It is the same data. So whenever you are studying for GS, since we are in geography option, study it in a more detail. അപ്പോൾ current affairs പഠിക്കുമ്പോൾ ഓരോ വിഷയം say when I was in 2019, I guess, when the composite water management index came out. So a GS person, somebody who's from a non-optional background, non-geography background, we have to study a limited content from the report. But if you are from a geography optional background, you have to obviously study much harder, get the regional perspective, basins and so that's basically a routine copy paste work. I can pick it from Vision and break it down. So I think we don't have to dictate on that. Then again, I'll try to give you sources. Why? Because you can easily do that process. Okay. Management of water resources is something which does not feature much in GS. So we'll dictate a few points which are very important. The first one is conjunctive use of surface and groundwater resources. Conjunctive use of surface and groundwater resources. Because in recent time, it has been found that utilization of groundwater resources has far exceeded the surface water utilization. Conjunctive groundwater surface water use would imply balancing the skewed ratio, and skewed ratio in favor of groundwater and more development of surface water resources. Second point would be solving the groundwater crisis through saving the groundwater crisis through different practices of rainwater harvesting, including the traditional and modern practices. Okay, use of afforestation, promoting afforestation, etc. So through all this, so you need to address the demand side of water supply. Now we can write several examples. For example, if you look at the case of Alwar Pani Sensor, in Rajasthan, the waterman of India, Rajendra Sachar, Arawari Pani Sensor. So they created a lot of ponds and check dams, small ponds and check dams to collect water and promote groundwater recharge. So that is a very huge successful ratio. The Arawari River, which was dead, has been rejuvenated in its basin. Water harvesting practices were done, and that has led to the rise of groundwater table, which then led to the rejuvenation of the river. So such practices are carried out across India. So in Rajasthan, you have the Johad system, which is earthen dams. You have the Tanga system, which has underground pits for water conservation. Bawali, which is step wells. So these kind of traditional practices can be. Bawalis would be there. Johads would be there. Similarly, Kuls in Himachal Pradesh to convert snow melt waters into human utilization. So such methodologies can be utilized to increase the reservoirs of water. Okay. So another methodology is that instead of banning or regulating, regulating the private wells, reducing their significance through improving public water supply, would reduce the over exploitation of groundwater resources. Yeah, ice tuba in Ladakh can be mentioned. Ice tuba in the bamboo irrigation system in Meghalaya can be used. So anything can be used. There are several examples that we can find out. Okay. Similarly, rationalization of subsidies on power and energy, on power, electricity, and energy can help in regulating the excessive water utilization in agricultural sector. Similarly, another method that can be mentioned is that agricultural reforms, agricultural modernization processes, including several can be mentioned. Agricultural modernization and rural diversification of rural economy can help in reducing the dependence on agriculture in rural areas. Thus helps to regulate water use efficiently, attaining optimum water use in rural areas. So modern practices conservation agriculture, organic agriculture, zero budget natural farming could be mentioned. Okay. There could be enough like more and more technologies like micro irrigation technology, sprinkler, drip irrigation can be promoted. They could be subsidized. Similarly, bottom up approach and local level planning in development of irrigation methodologies can be utilized so that there is greater accountability on the part of the people involved itself. Okay, so those are the points which can be mentioned. Now we have to just look at one more dimension with respect to water, that is the aspect of interbasin water transfer. That is a river interlinking project in India. So it is announced as the national water grid, just like the power grid, national water grid, okay, which will be trying to do transfer water from the surplus areas, national water grid. There are different units to it, the Himalayan unit and the peninsular unit. There are more numbers. 14 links have been proposed in the Himalayan unit, and similarly about 200 units, 100 units something has been proposed in the peninsular unit. So there are different components. For that matter, just few basic things can be understood, and then we can mainly focus on the analytical part. There is Brahmaputra Ganga link, because obviously Brahmaputra is a hugely surplus basin. So there is a proposal to to interlink Brahmaputra with Ganga, and then there is what interlinking the left bank tributaries of Ganga itself. Right now in Peninsula there are different things like there is between east flowing rivers, between west flowing rivers, from west flowing rivers to east flowing rivers. So there are different types of such proposals that have been made. These are basically attained to like what transfer water from surplus region to deficit regions. And there is also a proposal of transferring from Himalayan. This is the widest of proposal. I don't think which is ever going to happen. Peninsular what rivers, but these are being considered. And in fact, India Tola, one more thing is that there's north flowing rivers. I think we can see interlinking happening in the case of north flowing rivers, which is the Ken Batua project. In east flowing rivers, you can see between the Polavaram project. Polavaram project where Krishna and Godavari are being linked. So these are some of the major. These two are one of the projects that already are underway, which are happening. And then there are other, other proposals that are being made. So, but what is more important for us is the feasibility of this thing. How feasible is that? We'll see certain pros of benefits of river interlinking and certain problems of river interlinking. Okay, so I think we can write this one. So we'll start with benefits. Benefits of National Water Grid. Food security. Benefits, first of all, is ensuring food security. Interlinking would allow increase in irrigated area and thus increasing food production. It is and increasing in irrigated area, which will help in increasing food production and achieve food security. It is expected that the irrigated area can be raised from about 114 million hectare to about 114 to 140 million hectares. Okay. The another benefit is power production, hydroelectricity production. Interlinking and associated HEV projects is expected to provide an additional 34 gigawatt of hydroelectric power. 34 gigawatt of hydroelectric power. Ensuring another benefit is that ensuring water supply for domestic and industrial sectors, which could be increased from 90 billion cusecs to 155 billion cusecs. We will also have the benefit of developing inland water transportation, development of inland water transportation, particularly in the North Indian plains and peninsular, coastal plains of the peninsula. Another benefit is environmental hazard management, natural hazard management, which would through management of floods in the northern and eastern parts of the country, and droughts in the southern and western parts of the country. It will also allow transfer of surplus water to environmentally scarce regions, which would positively benefit ecological habitat of that region, which would enrich or positively benefit ecological habitat of such region. The project will also create several economic opportunities, which will boost sectors like iron and steel, cement, as well as help in diversification of rural economy, Diversification of rural economy. And we'll also check distress migration. Check distress migration from rural to urban areas. Now, the issues associated with the National Water Grid or the River Linking Project. High cost of interlinking, that is finance, high financial cost during its initial proposal in the early 2000s. The cost was expected at $100 billion, which have grown in size with time and will be a huge burden on the exchequer. A study conducted by IIT Delhi, next point, a study conducted by IIT Delhi has questioned the future sustainability of the project. Has questioned the future sustainability of the project. According to this study, global warming would lead to global warming would increase, would lead to changes in the availability of water, in several rivers, in several river basins. Surplus and deficit basins as defined today would see decrease or increase. Decrease or increase in water availability. So it's like fast flowing rivers are expected to see a decline of 10% of water flow. Ganga is expected to, according to their study, when Ganga is expected to see increase in water flow by 7%. Right. So some of the surplus rivers which are today may become deficit rivers. Some of the deficit rivers may improve in their water supply in the future with respect. So Ganga, you can obviously match melting of glaciers and more rain. Several environmental concerns have also been raised, which includes destruction of forest and wildlife habitats, one. Second one, such a large-scale hydrological cycle modification. Of hydrological cycle. Large-scale modification of hydrological cycle can produce unexpected outcomes for future. It can it can lead to submergence of fertile land and displacement of large number of people. Now another point is the geotechnological problems involved in construction of canals. Geotechnological problems involved in the construction of canals, including the hard crystalline nature of rocks of the peninsula. Hard crystalline rocks of the peninsula, or relief difference between variation in relief between the plains and the plateaus, and within the plains and the plateaus, and within the plateaus itself. So, National Water Grid as such a project was emphasized in the early 2000s, and in fact, even the Supreme Court had once directed the government to implement what you call as the project in a time-bound manner, but which was then has not seen much of things. So it is normally it is across the board understood that it has huge environmental and ecological cost, which is raising several questions on the efficacy of the project, and rightly so. Much of the project has not been implemented, and in fact, what is suggested as solution is decentralized approach rather than a centralized approach. Decentralized approach of augmenting water resources and micro linkages between rivers. So this Polavaram project, all these are kind of micro linkages. Large scale projects are not envisaged to be that beneficial, but micro projects can be promoted. That's the conclusion we can make out on this one. And also, India is a very arid country. Very few rivers are surplus, and mostly India is a very arid country in parts like mostly the peninsular part. So it's very difficult to find that much of water available. So we'll write a conclusion also. In a country like India, where about 70% of area, or two-third of the area is categorized as arid and semi-arid. It is better to opt for more environmentally sustainable. It's better to opt for more environmentally sustainable methods like watershed management, and river interlinking should only be accorded a supplementary status. These also require that EIA and SIA, environmental impact assessment and social impact assessment, should be completed comprehensively from contemporary perspective, very standard, comprehensively from contemporary perspective, for each of links proposed. For each of link that is proposed. Okay, so that is about interlinking, river interlinking. Some of the major issues have been seen. Some of the projects that are ongoing has seen. Even in Panna's case, it is the Ken Betwa project is we have read that several large areas of Panna reserve would be submerged, and it will affect the tiger population there. So such concerns are there. So when development certainly India needs a lot of efforts to remove poverty and develop the country, but development should not be at the cost of sustainability of the development itself. Okay, so that is something you can keep in mind even with respect to water resources. So something we've studied today is that all about groundwater. So about water, very important topic, very well asked in the exam. So things you have to remember is that water is finite resource in India, and it is mostly groundwater and surface water. Both are equally exploited, both are polluted, both are a very scarce commodity in India. So, and talking about it, we can understand a couple of facts, couple of good maps about it. Then it mostly focused upon why the resource exhaustion is there. We can go for demand side analysis and supply side analysis. And when you are giving a solution also, you should look for demand side and supply side analysis. So we have mentioned a couple of quite few solutions to the issues also. And one of the major area then we have is the interlinking project. We have seen that as well, right? So അത്രയും കാര്യങ്ങളാണ് ബേസിക് ആയിട്ട് നമുക്ക് കാര്യങ്ങൾ അറിയാനുള്ളത്. And we can read more whenever current affairs related topics coming on that. We can read more on that. So again, I'll also look into some of the material that I'll provide. I can copy or not, make it part of your answer, your answer book copies or your class notes. So that will suffice. Okay. Anything to add? See, our focus should be on having sufficient content and not much on having the entire chunk of content. You know, you should be having. See, if in this case you can use one argument, one fact. Maybe for water you have two facts, which are two concepts of facts, as one would say, with you. Like one, the percentage population and water availability, and one is of scarcity number. I mean, with respect to water scarcity, you have these two numbers. No, you don't have to look for more and more facts for each of one, not required for that. Similarly, you have solutions which are ample in number. You don't have to look for much of solutions now. You almost have them. Maybe you can collect one or two solutions. That's it. So don't keep on searching for too much content. It is not required. Thought about like we'll be collecting to our study of GS. So that'll be nice. So we can rather what you can do is look for some locational analysis, locational things. That would be nice. Okay. So I think you are otherwise we'll continue. And tomorrow we'll start with biogeography. We want to start it today, but I spoken a bit more on some of the topics.
സാർ ശനിയാഴ്ച സാറ് ഫ്രീ ആണോ?
എന്താ ഡേറ്റ് എന്താ ശനിയാഴ്ച? 31 1-2. ഓക്കെ, എങ്ങനെയാണ് നിങ്ങളുടെ ഷെഡ്യൂൾ എങ്ങനെയാണ്?
അങ്ങനെയാണെങ്കിൽ നാളത്തെ ക്ലാസ് ശനിയാഴ്ചത്തേക്ക് മാറ്റാൻ പറ്റുമെന്ന് അറിയാൻ വേണ്ടിട്ടായിരുന്നു. എക്സാം ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു. അപ്പം
ഓക്കെ, എല്ലാവരും കൂടെ ഒരു അഭിപ്രായം പറയാമെങ്കിൽ ഞാനത് ഇതിനോട് പറയാം. എക്സാം എപ്പോഴോ?
എക്സാം എന്നാ?
എക്സാം രാവിലെ 10 മണിക്കാണ്. ഉച്ച സമയത്ത് ക്ലാസ് വെക്കുകയാണെങ്കിൽ കുഴപ്പമില്ലായിരുന്നു.
എക്സാം രാവിലെ 10 മണിക്കാണോ? പിന്നെ വൈകുന്നേരം ക്ലാസ് വെച്ചാൽ എന്താ പ്രശ്നം?
ശനിയാഴ്ച രാവിലെ തന്നെ, അല്ല ശനിയാഴ്ച വൈകിട്ട്.
ക്ലാരിറ്റി ഉണ്ട്. ക്ലാസ് എക്സാം വൈകുന്നേരം ആണോ? വൈകുന്നേരം നമുക്ക് മാറ്റാം. അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഞാൻ ജുബിനോട് ചോദിച്ചാൽ പോലെ, ജുബിന് അറിയാമായിരിക്കുമല്ലോ. വൈകുന്നേരം ആണെങ്കിൽ ഞാൻ ജുബിനോട് സംസാരിക്കാം.
അല്ല, എക്സാം രാവിലെയാണ്. അപ്പം നാളെ വെള്ളിയാഴ്ച അല്ലേ? അപ്പം
നാളെ വെള്ളിയാഴ്ചത്തെ ക്ലാസ് ശനിയാഴ്ചത്തേക്ക് മാറ്റാവുന്നതാണ്. ശരി അല്ലേ? പഠിക്കാൻ സമയം കിട്ടാൻ. ഓക്കെ, എല്ലാവർക്കും അഭിപ്രായമാണോ? അങ്ങനെയാണെങ്കിൽ ഞാൻ സംസാരിക്കാം. എങ്ങനെയാണ് ഫൈൻ നമ്മൾ ഇന്റർപ്രറ്റ് ചെയ്യണ ഏഞ്ചല്? ഫൈൻ ടു ചേഞ്ച് ദ ക്ലാസ്, ഫൈൻ ടു ഹാവ് ദ ക്ലാസ്? ചേഞ്ച് ചെയ്യണം ഒക്കെയാണ്. ചേഞ്ച് ചെയ്യണമെന്നുണ്ടോ അതോ ചേഞ്ച് ചെയ്യുന്നില്ലേ കുഴപ്പമില്ലെന്നുണ്ടോ?
ചേഞ്ച് ചെയ്യാം സാർ.
ഓക്കെ ഓക്കെ, I'll go with the majority opinion. ഞാൻ ജുബിനോട് സംസാരിക്കാം അങ്ങനെയാണ് കേട്ടോ. നിങ്ങൾ ശനിയാഴ്ചത്തെ സമയം കൂടെ ഒന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു. ശനിയാഴ്ച ഷെഡ്യൂൾ ഒന്നും ഇന്റർവ്യൂ
ശനിയാഴ്ച ഉച്ച കഴിഞ്ഞാണെങ്കിലും കുഴപ്പമില്ല.
എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ April 2 അല്ലേ?
2-ാം തീയതി.
April 3 ശനിയാഴ്ച അല്ലേ? ശനിയാഴ്ച നമുക്ക് ക്ലാസ് വെക്കാം. 2 ക്ലാസ് ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ കുഴപ്പമില്ലായിരിക്കുമല്ലോ.
പ്രശ്നമൊന്നുമില്ല.
എല്ലാവർക്കും ഓക്കെ അല്ലേ?
ഒരു ക്ലാസ് പോരെ സാറേ?
നമ്മൾ ഏറ്റവും പെട്ടെന്ന് ഫ്രീ ആക്കുക എന്നാണ് നമ്മൾ ഉദ്ദേശിക്കുന്നത്. 2 ക്ലാസ് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ നമുക്ക് ഈ ഒരു 2-3 സെഷൻ കൊണ്ട് പരിപാടി തീർക്കാം. 2 മണിക്കൂറിന് 2 സെഷൻ.
3 ക്ലാസ് മതിയാകും.
ഇനിയിപ്പോ നമുക്ക് മെയിൻലി ബാക്കിയുള്ളത് ബയോജോഗ്രഫിയിൽ ഒരു പാർട്ടാണ്. എൻവയോൺമെന്റ് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ കുറേയും കൂടെ ഡൈനാമിക് ആണ്. ഈ ഓരോ വർഷം ഓരോ ചോദ്യങ്ങളാണ് ചോദിക്കുന്നത്. സോ വി ക്യാൻ ബേസിക്കലി ഡു ഇസ് ദാറ്റ് കവർ സം ഓഫ് ദി കോർ ഏരിയാസ്. കോർ ആയിട്ടുള്ള ബേസിക് കൺസെപ്റ്റ് കവർ ചെയ്യുക എന്നുള്ളതാണ് എൻവയോൺമെന്റ്. ഫോർ എക്സാമ്പിൾ പ്രിൻസിപ്പിൾസ് ഓഫ് എക്കോളജി, ദാറ്റ് ഈസ് ദർ. പിന്നെ ബയോൺസിന്റെ കാര്യമാണ് കൂടുതൽ ഡീറ്റെയിൽ പോകേണ്ട. ബിക്കോസ് ദിസ് ജസ്റ്റ് നമുക്കൊരു മെറ്റീരിയൽ തന്നാൽ തീരുന്ന കേസേ ഉള്ളൂ. ഇപ്പം നമ്മൾ എന്താണ് ഗ്രാസ് ലാൻഡ്, എന്താണ് ട്രോപ്പിക്കൽ ഗ്രാസ് ലാൻഡ്. പക്ഷെ ജോഗ്രഫി കുറച്ചും കൂടെ കൺസെപ്റ്റ് കാര്യമാണ്. അപ്പൊ അത് കുറച്ച് നേരം കൂടും. എൻവയോൺമെന്റ് അധികം നമ്മൾ എടുക്കുന്ന കാര്യമല്ല. 3 ടോപ്പിക് ഐ കനോട്ട് എക്സാക്ട്ലി സേ 3 or 4 we will be able to finish. Okay, so Saturday, like I'll try to see, like അതുകൊണ്ട് ചോദിക്കട്ടെ. I'll try to see. നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ഏറ്റവും നേരത്തെ ചേർക്കുന്നതല്ലേ നല്ലത്. എനിക്കും സമയമില്ല, ഉണ്ടായിട്ടല്ല. പക്ഷെ കുറെ
അത് കുഴപ്പമില്ലല്ലോ. സിബിനെ എന്ത് പറയുന്നു? കുഴപ്പമില്ല.
ഓക്കെ, ഞാൻ സംസാരിച്ചിട്ട് അപ്പൊ നാളെ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ബ്രേക്ക് വേണം. ഫൈൻ.
ശനിയാഴ്ച ഒരു 6:30 ആക്കുകയാണെങ്കിൽ കുഴപ്പമില്ല. 6:30 ആണെങ്കിൽ 6:30.
2 സെഷൻ ആണെങ്കിൽ ആദ്യത്തെ സെഷൻ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് എപ്പോഴാണ്? ഓക്കെ,
ഉച്ച കഴിഞ്ഞ് തൊട്ട് ഫ്രീ ആണ്. രാവിലത്തോട് കൂടിയിട്ട് ഒരു 1 മണി കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് ഒരു 2 കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് എപ്പോഴേലും വെച്ചോ, കുഴപ്പമില്ല.
എന്താ റോഷൻ എന്താ പറയുന്നത്?
സർ 6 to 8 ആക്കാൻ പറ്റുമോ വൈകിട്ടത്തേത്?
വേണ്ട, 6:30 മതി.
സർ 6:30 ഞങ്ങൾക്ക് ഇവിടെ ഹോസ്റ്റലിൽ ഫുഡ് കിട്ടത്തില്ല. 8:30 കഴിയാൻ. അപ്പൊ കുറച്ച് ദിവസമായിട്ട് അത് ഇച്ചിരി പ്രശ്നത്തിൽ ഇരിക്കുകയായിരുന്നു. അപ്പൊ അതുകൊണ്ട് പറഞ്ഞ
8:30 ആയി കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ഫുഡ് കിട്ടുക നന്ദു വളരെ ഒരു ലെജിറ്റ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള കൺസേൺ. ഫുഡ് കഴിക്കണമെന്നൊക്കെ പറഞ്ഞു എന്ത് ചെയ്യും?
ഇല്ല, ഞാൻ ഫുഡ് കഴിക്കുന്നതിനെ കുറിച്ചല്ല ഉദ്ദേശിച്ചത്. അല്ല, ഫുഡ് ഞങ്ങൾക്ക് എപ്പോ ആണെങ്കിലും കിട്ടും. അതുകൊണ്ട് ഞങ്ങൾക്ക് പ്രശ്നമില്ല.
അപ്പൊ നമുക്കിത് 6 മണിക്ക് തന്നെ വെക്കുന്നല്ലേ? റോഷന്റെ ഒരു പ്രത്യേക സാഹചര്യം ഫുഡൊക്കെ കിട്ടാതിരിക്കുന്ന വളരെ വിഷമകരമായിട്ടൊരു കാര്യമല്ലേ?
എന്നാ കുഴപ്പമില്ല.
ഓക്കെടാ, കൺസെൻസസ് ഉണ്ടാക്കി ഫ്രണ്ടിലോട്ട് പോകും. ഓക്കെ, സോ വിൽ സി. ലൈക്ക് നമുക്ക് ശനിയാഴ്ച 2 ക്ലാസ് വെക്കാം. We'll try to wind up the sessions, right? So if at all something is left behind and all, like we can, I'll be here. നമുക്ക് ഫിലിംസ് കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ടാണെങ്കിലും കുറച്ച് കാര്യങ്ങളൊക്കെ സംസാരിക്കാം. No problem there. Anyhow, we have covered the basics fair enough. So Indian geography ആണെങ്കിൽ ഇപ്പം പുള്ളിക്കാരി മൺസൂൺ ഒക്കെ എടുത്തുന്ന ഓൾറെഡി ഉള്ളതുകൊണ്ട് പിന്നെ എനിക്ക് അധികം സമയത്ത് സ്പെൻഡ് ചെയ്യേണ്ടി വന്നത്. We'll cover it and we'll do it. ഓക്കെ, എന്നാൽ നമുക്ക് ഇന്ന് കൺക്ലൂഡ് ചെയ്യാം. നാളെ നമുക്ക് ഇല്ല. നാളെ ഞാൻ ഇതിനോട് പറയാം. നാളത്തെ കാര്യം എക്സ്റ്റെൻഡ് ആക്കാം. And we'll meet on April 2. Okay.
Okay, sir.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Good night, sir.